With you from all the way from Calgary, Alberta. I give you with Carvel Creative. We're going to have basically Cameron Farn is going to take us into the concept development stage here for sculpture for real life installation. That's fair.
Yeah, large scale installations.
Large scale public installation, which is just another facet of the ZBrush universe being met. You know, another barrier being conquered. So without further ado, put your hands together in a warm day 3 welcome for Cameron Farn. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So first, we want to thank Pixologic, Paul, and the entire team, Jaime and Ofer, for entertaining the idea of having us come and talk about ZBrush for the use of large-scale sculpture in public art. It's not something that's talked about very often, but it is sort of a large part of what we do at Carvel. I'd say. Out of the sort of 22 or 23 projects that we're doing this year, 70% of those involve ZBrush. So they are sort of large-scale, semi-organic objects and mixed with mechanical and structural elements that artists are requesting, public artists are requesting. But it is a massive part of what we do, and we're happy to have the program at our disposal. So thank you guys very much. We're going to get started here right away with just an introduction to Carvel, and then we're going to look at some of the work that we've done to give you an idea of sort of the scale and type of object styles that we're working with. And then after that, we'll just move on to looking at some ZBrush stuff and a few pieces of mine, and we'll discuss how those are fabricated, including looking at some large-scale 3D prints as well. Just to get it out of the way, this piece was originally sculpted in a course with Geo Napkel, which I really enjoyed. Learned quite a bit. Oh yeah, Geo's fantastic. And I encourage you to find and take his courses as well. But this piece is really large, but it was printed on a Form 2. So what we want to get across for Form 2, for example, or the Form product, is that even on the small bed, that you can actually build large-scale pieces. This is a multi-piece print. So the legs, feet, and other objects were printed on a tray. So we had multi-pieces per tray. I think there were 5 trays printed. But that assemblage is now very easy with keying and finishing. And the part came out really well. And we use this technique quite a bit to showcase public art sculpture in small scale prior to fabrication. And I think for us, it's a fantastic tool as well. So let's get started. A little introduction to Carvel Creative. We are did that actually update? It did not. Screen. No, it did not. Odd. I'm just going to close that and we'll start it one more time just to be sure this is actually working. Swap screens here. Okay, there we go. So we've got, let's just move on to this slide. So our Carvel Creative is essentially a large-scale fabrication tool for public artists. So artists who are interested in having their work in the public realm and of a certain scale come to us for assistance in building presentation packages, 3D modeling out their concepts, and taking those ideas when awarded through to fabrication. So Carvel does quite a bit of work on the CNC side. We have a 5-axis machine that can essentially cut out anything at any scale. We have a manufacturing sector, model making, architectural, and a massive paint center. And we work with casters who use aluminum, bronze, and other materials in foundry. So we have 2 or 3 in our immediate location, and we use outside vendors when required, when those parts get really massive. And here is, I think, an introduction to Carvel. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll chat afterward. Oh, thank you. Just a shout out to our Carvel team, who are fantastic. We've got a spectacular crew and just a hardworking set of individuals who really strive to maintain an artist's vision throughout that construction and installation process, which is one of our mandates, making sure we get that artist everything they want out of a piece. So we're going to take a look at a few of our public art installations, and we'll talk about the artist a little bit, and then we're going to move on to a few of my pieces that we can discuss and kind of break down and get into a little bit. So this piece is a Mafonwe McLeod piece. It's in Vancouver. She's a public artist who has shown her work throughout Canada, the United States, and in Europe. The Birds, which this is called, is one of several public artworks she has been commissioned for. And these are 5 meters long sculptures, male and female house sparrows. And they were originally installed in 2010 for the Winter Olympics, I think at the Athletes Village. And they were produced originally in hard-coated EPS foam. So that is like a urethane product that is coated over top of styrofoam, but a high-density material. And they did not last outside. It was the wrong product for an exterior application. It's just not meant to do that. And so Carvel was commissioned to remove them, scan them, resculpt them in ZBrush, have those CNC'd out, hand finished, mold and cast in fiberglass, or in aluminum. And in the end, these ended up weighing about 5,000 pounds of cast material with bronze feet and stainless steel interior structure to make sure that these sort of stood the test of time in that area. And they have a very nice paint job, automotive clear coat, and a product like a 3M film you might find on vehicles to coat certain sections of this to, dissuade skateboarders. This is a Cupid doll. In 2017, a boutique architecture firm named McKinley Burkhart was looking to expand their offices in Vancouver, and they were looking for an impactful sculpture that had to be a focal point of their new renovated office spaces. And this particular piece was sort of very important to the two owners as it kind of reminded them of their childhood, a focus on youthful vitality in a physical form, and a reminder to staff to keep the designs and projects light and fun, which we thought was really interesting. This Cupid doll, originally, it dated 1912 to 1920, this kind of style of toy. And this finished piece stands over 9 feet tall. And the large glasses actually, for me, make it the most fun piece that we've done. I really love this one. This is Regina ceramic artist Victor Szynski. He is a Canadian ceramic artist, and he works in community. And he was commissioned by the University of Saskatoon to produce an enlargement of one of his existing smaller works, which is a ceramic construction, sort of dedicated to education. Now, the scan that we did had to be cleaned up and tidied in ZBrush, again, one of our main tools. And it was, from there, exported out and milled in a particular style of foam, and then coated in what we call a synthetic stone. After that, it was put on the mill, a 5-axis machine, and it was cut out over, I think, 3 days to get the finish that we wanted. After that, it was hand finished, and again, hand painted to match the original. And I think they were very happy with that final piece. This is one of my favorites. This one's for Paul. He's a hockey fan, so he threw it in here. The gallery and monument sculptor Al Henderson was awarded an interior public art commission for the new NHL arena in Edmonton. I don't think Edmonton's Paul's favorite team, but whatever. Paul, too bad. That's true. That is true. Yes, that is absolutely true. I still like LA, but I'm a Penguins fan. I am so sorry. I'm going to be in so much trouble when I get home. Al worked in ZBrush himself to create the original 3D models, and then our team helped to modify those for him for fabrication. There's 7 figures here. And this is called Seven Figures with a Puck. Once those models were kind of, again, exported out of ZBrush, they were CNC'd on our machine. Now, this is probably one of the only cases where we use urethane hard coat finishes, because this is an interior element and not exposed to weather. It's up on the wall, no one will ever touch it. And the bronze finish you're seeing is actually a automotive paint finish with a patina method, which we developed in our shop to get these this bronze look. They're attached to the wall behind a printed graphic, I think on wallpaper style material or canvas, and those lines represent some of the traffic you normally see on ice, and really does kind of bring together the multi-use of the space. There's hockey, there's ice skating and the other activities in the arena, and we thought it was a beautiful piece by Al. Carvel was again really excited to work with Mofanwe McLeod. This piece is called Cordials. It's placed in a busy plaza in Burnaby, BC, and these were to emulate old-fashioned Victorian illustrations in 3 dimensions and create a collage in this particular area. So 5 sculptures of various scales were produced in ZBrush, and some of the images that you'll see next are actual ZBrush images, textured and rendered in KeyShot. Again, these were exported directly from ZBrush, decimated models to CNC, and cut out at scale that we determined would fit Mofanwe's budget. We were very happy how these turned out. They were cast in aluminum. They have frameworks, again, of stainless steel, and they received a pewter patina finish and clear coats that we hope, or we know will last the test of time here. These are the ZBrush sculpts in KeyShot with a custom Warren pewter finish. Shane Hurl, I believe, and Dave McLeod did the original sculptures for these, and they did a fantastic job. Our team consists of, by the way, they consist of 4 or 5 ZBrush sculptors. We have SolidWorks professionals in the shop, painters, model makers, machinists, welders, carpenters. All of the guys work really hard. Our guys and gals work really hard to produce pieces that our artists are super happy with. This is a piece by Douglas Copeland, and he reached out to Carvel to produce a promotional piece, or to reproduce a promotional piece that he found in a dumpster in Japan. And you can see in this image the little figure on the right. That's the original he found, and he wanted that resized as a large male figure, which you can see there. And then these were scanned, again, enlarged, cleaned up in ZBrush. And the female figure we had to do ourselves and kind of match the aesthetic of the original. We didn't find an existing female figure, so that was up to us to produce. My favorite picture in this collage is really the arms. It's like a scene in a horror movie, but still, incredibly awesome. It's the dollhouse scene where you eventually die. These ended up being 6-foot-tall bobbleheads, so they actually bobble really nicely. And a tremendous amount of work in ZBrush to get these done. The idea here in this particular installation was to bring attention to the overuse of plastics and the pollution in and around Vancouver, and we thought what a fantastic narrative to bring to attention. Our current workload, again, is 22 to 26 new works in progress of various artists and architects, the largest of which I believe is 40 to 60 feet tall. It's I can't discuss the piece in detail, but it is a part that is heavily worked in ZBrush, and I think it installs next year. So we'll be able to talk and see that on our website in the future. Here's a piece in the shop right now, and as you can tell, it's beautiful. It's also very colorful, and it's incredibly large, if you can tell by the blurry photo. Can't talk about that one. This one also is triangular in shape and colored orangish, and sits in our shop. Actually floats in the air. Again, can't talk about that one due to constraints. I could go on, but the this year's work, as in film and games, we're under contract. We cannot really talk about that. Artists, of course, have the first right to show that work when it's installed and revealed, and we respect that. Now, I'm a public artist and a fine artist, and I do a lot of character and creature work. We won't be talking about a lot of that today, but you're welcome to check out my personal work on social media. Join me on Facebook and Instagram, and over the next month or so, I'll be putting up all the work I've done for a project called World of Red Sand. So that's what this character is from. So you can see all of the character work, illustrations, and designs if that is your thing. Today we're going to stick primarily to public art, and I'm going to show you 5 pieces that are concept work, some more finished than others. But just to give you a sense of the kind of objects we hope ZBrushers will start to create, particularly for the public realm, and we think you're all really capable of doing, kind of stepping into that space, submitting for jobs, and hopefully telling cool stories that need to be told out there for public places. All right, so let's get started. Here is the first one. Hope you enjoy it. All right, so this first piece, thank you very much, you didn't have to do that. So this is the story of Kairos, and if you're familiar with Greek and Roman culture, he is the precursor to Mercury. But the story I wanted to tell here really centers around achievement, and I wanted to represent a story that was about adversity and kind of rising above that. So just to illustrate some of those conceptual elements that are very specific to Kairos, the god. He sometimes carries a razor, he runs on his tiptoes, he has wings like Mercury. But I wanted to kind of play a little bit with that general aesthetic and give him a helmet that was more knife-like. And in this case, he is rising above the underworld. He's moving through a circlet, a ring, as representing the opening of that space. And he's outrunning silence, rhetoric, hate, and which is all engulfed in a sort of storm of malice. Yeah, it's one of my favorite pieces. It was one of the first that I designed for a public art offering. This will be reproduced in small scale, probably 30 to 40 inches tall. And then later on, a 6-foot piece. We're currently pricing that out for bronze, which will be a mixture of CNC milling and 3D printing. And then after that, it's being offered as a large-scale, 24-foot tall monument piece in bronze, gold leaf, and phosphorus paint for some of the reflective materials, which is really cool. We can dig into that model when we get through these 5 pieces, or I really have a work that I need to get done next week, so I brought it with me. And I thought, we have a choice. I can show you those, or I can get to work. We can decide later. Here's one more of one of my designs. I hope you like it as well. Thank you, guys. So this one's called The Stalled Transformation of Woman. It really brings to light this containment of potential, sort of the arresting of the evolution of equal rights for women, whether that's in the workplace or rights to their own reproductive equality. This is a very personal one to me. And it's currently being worked on further, but I expect these pieces again to be printed and prepared around 6 feet for bronze, and again at monument scale. This one's quite tall, so it really brought to light some engineering issues and some structural challenges, and we can dig into that again in a few more minutes. Here's the third one. We've got 5 in total. They're about a minute each, so hopefully doesn't get too weird. forward here. So this is the story of the fall of Zeus. What I wanted to sort of, the narrative around this piece was essentially a pivotal moment in the passing of self-determination to man by gods. In this rendition, he is basically shattering the connection between earth and heaven. And the lightning in this case is designed to be covered in a phosphorescent material with lighting at the top and bottom, which causes that element to glow. And it can change intensity, so you get a little bit of movement across that phosphorescent material, and it creates a sense of motion. Again, this piece is envisioned to be about 22 to 24 feet tall. That brings the character into just a little over, well, probably 1.5 scale, 1.5 times life scale. And it's designed to be in a bowl-type courtyard. So there's stairs down with a walkway, so you can walk out and look directly up at him, but there's elements that bring you closer to the figure, but as you drop down the stairs, it becomes more and more and more imposing. So the idea is to just create a very interesting, useful, and beautiful space. Okay, one more. Here we go. So this is titled Tether, but it began as a story of a man bipolar. And you can tell from the description, he's a very calm, somber person. He's floating, and I think the shape language in this piece actually gives him that lightness, that elevation. But he is pinned and unmoving. He's injured, but he's tethered to the ground. So this is to bring mental illness more to the forefront as a discussion. It's designed to be quite large, but it's a suspended piece, so this may be an interior structure. And we can look at the ZBrush sculpture afterward, but it is, I struggled quite a bit with how to actually place this piece in space. So when I was attaching objects to, let's say, the wings of the hat to the ground, it interrupted the flow of the piece, so it was very challenging to find a way to tell the story of elevation and containment again without placing something in that location. So eventually, the decision was to hang it from very strong stainless steel cables. Here's one more for you. Thank you. I rarely show my personal public artwork, but Carvel is helping me to kind of bring it a little bit more to the forefront and to work out fabrication casting issues for some of these pieces, which have, there will be some challenges for sure. This particular one, it is again, it seems to be a theme with me, is about capturing and containment. In this case, it's that oppression of the intellectual, the subversion of knowledge, that type of thing. And it really, as a component to public artwork, wherever it goes, it's a warning as well, how you can be trapped and contained, and essentially the fight against that. Let's just pop over. Yes, okay, so we're going to look into, we're going to hop into ZBrush now. This is the piece that I need to get done next week. I'm going to work a little bit on it, and feel free to ask any questions at any time about fabrication, how this might go forward, the piece I'm working on, or any of the work that you see here, and we'll flip back and forth from project to project if there's interest in looking at those other models as well. So let me just hop into ZBrush here. Okay, so this, this piece is actually quite large. You can tell from the model, the scale figure is 6 feet tall. So these pipes are meant to be, are like 30 or 48 inch. What I'm envisioning is a stainless steel or a cast pipe with welded seams at their joints. This is meant to be a very imposing, large piece, and the chain really is more important than the object that will be placed in this center section. It's called link for a reason, and it's the sort of the breaking of, or the capturing again of a figure is just another link in a chain. It's a piece about individuality, I think is really where this one's headed. For us, or for me, what I like to do is I want to always have a scale figure, and I work proportionally for the most part. So this piece, I really can just throw a sphere in and start sculpting. I'm not really concerned initially about getting scale perfect at the beginning, but these objects do help to remind me of the scale of the work. On the right here, these are just 1 foot square cubes. And if we get in close there, you can see that they're broken up into just 6-inch sections, so I can get a decent measurement, a general measurement. And I can also use the transpose tool to set the values using this as well. Included in this package, and I think the students in the workshop got this, the scaling Z tool. I like to include actual structural members in the ZBrush file so that I can extrude these at any time to give myself some security that structure will actually fit into these objects. And I think it's a good idea for public artists to become used to the idea of having these types of structural materials in their pieces, just to make it, just to have the confidence that it is constructible to some degree. So in this case, I've just got hotkeys set up and my UI here. So I'll touch on some of the locations of these for new users in the regular UI, but for now, this is how I like to work. My regular brush is at the bottom, nothing fancy. I have standard, Damien standard clay build, smooth. These are all general brushes that you've seen used over the length of the summit so far. The one that I haven't seen used at all this summit is clay polish, which I find really odd. Mostly because this particular brush does a lot of work for you in one click. And I'll show you sort of the extent of the use of this clay polish function that helps me sort of build planes in ZBrush when I'm sculpting. So I'm just going to go in and we're going to append, oh, already have a sphere. Make the sphere live. We're going to go to move and just kind of scale this down. And we're going to bring this over. So I know, like right away, the concept was to have this object being captured here. And I'm envisioning a figure in this space as well. I'm going to try a few new things out that I haven't tried before, but I have some ideas that, watching others this summit that I want to kind of explore. So we're going to drop the sphere in. We're going to go back to draw here. And we're going to leave it really low poly. I don't work high poly in the beginning, and my professional and past experience as a traditional clay sculptor is to keep it as messy as possible for as long as possible. It's unnecessary to do detail. It's unnecessary in the beginning to have huge subdivision levels. So for me, it's about getting most of the general forms blown out as quickly as you're comfortable with, and then refining the whole way through. So one of the things I did want to try, and I had an idea, I'm not sure if it'll work, but we'll play around here. I know that there's a figure in the sphere somewhere, but the way I was thinking we might find it is just to start masking off areas. Let's just put on transparency. And I'm going to place a mask here, draw in sort of a neck shape. And we're going to drop in body shape. We're going to keep it very general. It's unnecessary, again, to have super details here. I'm just going to create sort of a silhouette of kind of what I'm looking for. Really poor proportions. I actually don't. Anatomy and proportion is not important to me as a feeling. And if I need to break that anatomy to get a particular flow that I enjoy, I will break it. I haven't really gotten into sculptress so much, but I do want to get in there and try it out a little bit more. And this may be a total bust, but we're going to give it a shot anyway. Let's actually turn off these other subtools. Well, that might work for us. Let's give it a shot. So we'll bring this up. We're going to go to masking. I'm just going to sharpen that a little bit. And I think it is polygroup. Where are we? Polygroup from masking. Polygroup mask clear. I'm going to get rid of that. Just to get a general overall shape here, we're going to delete hidden. And we'll turn on double-sided, and we'll throw polys on here. I'm not necessarily, right now, don't need the lines, don't need the polylines. We'll just leave it. And then we're going to go to geometry. Where are we? Edge loop, and we're just going to group loops to smooth that out. And we'll group visible. And then we're just going to Z-remesh that. I don't change many settings at all, other than maybe dropping the poly count down. Good enough. So all I'm looking for is a general shape, and then we're going to start moving some objects around. We can go into Z-Modeler. This is a great place to start getting thickness. So over the polygon, into extrude, and we're going to go to polygroup all, and we'll just bring this in a bit to get some thickness. Right. And that gives us enough, that's enough weird topology. And we're just going to group visible now. We don't need that. We're going to go to move, and we're going to put on, take transparency off, and we will put the ring on. So now you can kind of get a sense of where I'm going here. I'd like to see this character, or this figure, with a lot of tension and compression. And again, that idea of the attempt to contain in this particular narrative. So we're going to move some stuff around. Actually, you know what? We're going to go to move topology here, just so we can control a little more of the initial shape. Get the sizing down. I'm just using the bracket keys here to change sizes. Again, not really concerned about anatomy proportion at this point. I just want to get the general pose in place. So at Carvel, when I'm doing concepting for another artist, we work pretty extensively with them, whether that's a Skype conversation or whether we have them in-house. And we're doing that because it's not our artwork. Our aesthetic is different than theirs. Our job really is to develop a vocabulary with those artists that we both share, and then build that relationship to a point where we are giving them exactly what they're looking for. And I think one of the most favorite parts for me about the whole process is that you're exposed to the way other artists think, and the way they like to develop their work. And you can, it changes you. It changes you how you proceed through your own artistic development, right? We'll try and get through this quick here. I actually like these bends and curves. I'm not going to mess with those too much. What I think I'm going to do for now is I'm going to just go here for visibility's sake. We'll get rid of that. And I wasn't sure if this sphere kind of idea would work, but actually I don't mind that. It's almost gives you a start in terms of gesture when you're working over sort of a curved body form. Bring some shoulder in there. Body width. Hip. I think a lot of this particular piece is going to be a lot about weight as well. Keep hitting that wrong button. Thankfully, it's the exact same keyboard at home, which is nice. We'll just build, just sit, build up the shape. I get asked quite a bit, how long does stuff take? And for, at work, it's, as fast as the client would like. I try to knock out concepts depending on their complexity, can go from a few hours to a few days, depending on, again, the detail that's required. I don't mind keeping it messy. It's gesture for me. I just want to get the bones in there that I feel like will work. You know what I'm going to do, though? It's not compressed enough. Let's scale him up a bit. Bring this down. This leg closer to the chest. Curl those hips in a bit. Just gonna go to curve lasso. Ooh, hello. Rotate this. I'll just go back to the standard transpose line. Oh yeah, keep it dirty. And when you feel comfortable, you can dynamesh it. Ooh, look at that, sculpture done. In today's day and age, where the majority of artists coming to see you are not figurative artists, they're abstract artists or constructive artists. So a lot of the work we do is based on engineering and construction. One of the things that we would like to see is more figurative artists coming to us and wanting their work done. We're really, really, really proud that Andrew has agreed to work with us and to do a piece. Just to highlight the fact that public art, figurative public art isn't dead. We want more of it. We want more clear stories. Not that for me, that speaking for myself, I really enjoy the figure and I really enjoy the stories you can tell with a figure, whether that remains sort of abstract in some degree or not. Andrew would be choking me from behind if he saw this process, probably.
Actually, I'd like to say something about that, because I think the process is really interesting, and it exemplifies something I've been saying for many years to collaborators and students, from here at the Noman School to also the Los Angeles Academy of Figurative Art, where I teach. And I think it's really interesting that you started with nothing more than a sphere and used masking to extract essentially what has become the illustration part of it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I'm going to applaud you.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And it also is like further evidence that there's so many different ways to engage with this particular software, right? And there isn't really a right or wrong way. So if you're watching at home or you're thinking about getting into this, because I meet a lot of people who are like trying to get into this for the first time, and there really isn't a right or wrong. Just sort of dive in. It was kind of like the shorts I had on earlier. You just put one leg in, the other leg in, and suddenly you're, quasi-naked in front of a room full of people. Is it okay to take a few questions maybe while you're up there?
Yeah,
Is that cool? Let me facilitate that for you.
All of it.
We're running.
No.
We're getting short on ticks on the clock, and I'd like to take advantage of that. Is that a hand, Tim King? Look at this guy. There he is. Knockout!
Thanks, Cameron. Your work is amazing, and thanks for sharing all your personal sculptures, too.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
You have so much open space in your sculptures, and it looks like a lot of fabrication. I'm wondering how often you're thinking about that manufacturing process while you're doing the art, or do you just go for it and figure out how to make it stand later?
The truth is never. I really don't, I'm not concerned in the beginning about the structural element of it. Sometimes it pops up when there's a floating component or there's a very thin element. to it, like the cloaks or the capes or that type of thing. But in general, like 3D printing, once the design is done, you can make modifications as necessary. So hollow objects, you know that in casting it's going to become a hollow object. And in just in terms of engineering, solid rods only have a single outside surface, and they're actually not as strong, unless you get dimensionally huge, as pipe, which is hollow and has two surfaces. You have an exterior and an interior surface, which transfer load differently. So if you're using a cage of pipe rather than a solid material, you're going to have the strength you need to hold something up. You'll see a lot of traditional sculpture is conical in construction or in composition. There's a heavy base and a lighter top. In terms of engineering, that wide base helps. And so you'll see some of these sculptures will have a very sort of large, heavy component to the bottom, and they get lighter and lighter as they get to the higher elevations. I try to keep a little of that in mind, but initially it's more about composition and story. I'll work out the rest as necessary, or when an engineer beats me with a big stick.
Yeah, and also in line with that is your use of the Dynamesh right from the get-go, because it just allows you to pursue that artistic representation more quickly. Look at that. That was like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar right there.
I know earlier you were talking about welding structure within the chain itself. Have you ever thought of using the form of the weld itself to distinguish a certain emotion or form? Like welds are typically stronger if they're convex over concave, or is it a weld that contains porosity or anything like that?
That I'm envisioning for the pipe itself? I think porosity is very interesting, that effervescence kind of material, or that effect that happens in a pour weld, let's say. For those of you who don't know, for example, if you were MIG welding, which is like the extrusion of a metal alloy in an electrode, and it causes the source material and your filament to meld together. It's basically, you're melting two crystals with lightning. When you don't have oxygen, or I say if oxygen gets in there, it causes it to effervesce and you get bubbling, which is a very interesting effect. If you want that, you can do it. You just turn your gas off and you're welding with oxygen. But the gases like CO2 or argon are meant to disperse oxygen so that the weld can coalesce nice and cleanly. I'm a fan of leaving welds alone. I think they're beautiful in the way that beads that they're called are laid up, so you get that sort of chiclet on top of chiclet type of look. I'm a fan of leaving it alone. Polish it and walk away. Grinding it out causes problems.
Speaking of gaseous substances and dispersion.
Oh, look, gas.
That is the end for my native countryman, Cameron Farn. And want to thank you for doing this. Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. A very informative presentation. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
And it's really great to have a presentation that was deep diving into the world of fine art. I want to thank yourself and everyone at Carvel Creative back up in Canada. That's Calgary, correct? Okay, home of the Flames. I also want to thank this piece here sitting on the table. We didn't get a chance to talk about this earlier, but maybe we'll get a camera shot there, Tomas, to get the people in here. This is produced in collaboration with Farm Labs, right?
Yeah, I purchased a Form 2 quite some time ago, and
tell them that on the way out there.
It was absolutely integral to making my pieces larger. I never had access to a printer before, and I just kind of broke down and bought it. And
I like how you say that. It broke down. That's how I feel. I'm like,
yeah.
I feel the same way. I'm like about to break down and buy it.
For me, as a fine artist and public artist, it's an investment that I wanted to make. I think necessary in a lot of ways. If you're working digitally, when you do these public art calls, which require sort of multi-page packages, it's basically a sales pitch. They shortlist you from, let's say, a resume of 30 people down to 5. You present a package, which Carvel helps artists put together. And then you have to present. And part of that presentation is model making. You need to bring a physical representation of your piece. A lot of people use paper or foam core or 3D turnarounds. I'm a fan of the 3D model. There's nothing like something tactile in front of a potential client to say yes to, right? You're selling it. It's their product. and a 3D model absolutely makes sense in terms of selling it to a client.
Nothing like it in the world. From screen to print, that's the magic and the power of ZBrush. I want to thank you again. Put your hands together. Thank you very much. Okay. Sit tight. Sit tight.